Hello and welcome to CFO Focus Live. I'm Aditi Roy and I'll be your host today. You may know me from my time as a business correspondent for CNBC or my time on air in Philadelphia, where I was a reporter and an anchor. On today's show, we'll be focusing on food, talking with some of our favorite C-suite execs we've met during the CFO and CFO GC Focus series of in-person gatherings around the country. Reminder, this show becomes a podcast tomorrow, and you can listen in on Spotify, Apple, or your other favorite platforms. You can also access this show and the podcast at www.cfofocus.org. We will meet our illustrious panel in just a minute, but quickly, before we do, let's set the table, so to speak, on a bit of today's conversation. Today, we're diving into one of the most dynamic and most disrupted sectors of the economy, food and entertainment. The industry really sits at the intersection of shifting consumer behavior, rising costs, and evolving workforce expectations. 2025 has brought no shortage of challenges. Operators are still grappling with persistent supply chain disruptions, soaring food costs. Prices are expected to rise another 2.25% this year. At the same time, labor pressures are intensifying. Cities like LA and New York have pushed minimum wages north of $20 an hour. Immigration crackdowns are already constricting an already tight talent pool. We have tariff volatility, housing affordability crises, softening consumer confidence. And all that, you get a landscape that demands agility from every CFO and CEO in the business. But this story isn't just about headwinds, it's also about how leaders are adapting. We are seeing a renewed focus on simpler menus, digital ordering, automation, and experience-first dining. So today we're asking, how do you lead with clarity and control when everything from labor to lettuce is in flux? What bold bets are food and entertainment leaders making? And what does resilience really look like in 2025? Let's get right into it. First up on our panel and joining us live from Las Vegas is Shane Green, CEO of Foley Entertainment. Shane, tell us about yourself and give us a snapshot of your company. And for you and all of the panelists out there, when we say snapshot, we want to know what you do, your geographic reach, how many employees. Tell us about your revenues and profit.
All right, Aditi, great to see you again. Thanks so much. I'm Shane Green. I'm the CEO of Foley Hospitality. We are a management company for an array of businesses across multiple industries, including professional sports, hotels, wineries. We also have an incredible array of assets down in New Zealand. So yes, if you're detecting a small accent, that's where it's from. And I'm based here in our headquarters, which is in the experience capital of the world, Las Vegas. Across all of our businesses, we have about 3,500 team members in an array of companies doing a variety of things. But one of the things that we're all aligned on is that in today's world, you better be all about experience.
All right. You're a public company or private company, right?
Private company, exactly.
All right. And when was your last financing round?
Well, again, we're very fortunate. We have an incredible owner with a number of minority owners. But in terms of financing rounds, that's not something that we've had to be involved in so far.
All right. Thank you so much, Shane. We'll get back to you and dive into some of those topics in just a moment. But next, Jim Eschweiler. Jim is the CEO of Top Pot Doughnuts and also held top positions at clothing retailer Aritzia and Starbucks. Jim, before you tell us about yourself and your company, let's roll some tape giving some background on Top Pot. All right, we're supposed to see some tape, but maybe we'll see that a little bit later. But look, I've seen the videos. My mouth is watering during the research. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and Top Pot.
Thank you, Aditi. The tape is a lot more fun than all the headwinds you listed off. So, but we, as you said, so Top Pot Donuts and Coffee, we're Seattle based. We have 16 retail cafes. We have a pretty significant wholesale and grocery business as well. We do high-end, approachable, recognizable donuts, and we also roast our own coffee in-house.
We're going to get into all of that. So you are right now are you just in Seattle?
Correct, for now.
For now. Okay, well, we'll wait. It sounds like there might be more expansion in the mix. And what about your financing?
So it's not about the last financing for us, it's about the next one. So we've done a lot of work the last couple of years on infrastructure, readiness, preparing for growth. The best analogy I use is right here in Seattle. We have Climate Pledge Arena. Shane would know it from his hockey background, but back in the day, it was the Seattle Coliseum. When it was converted, they kept the roof and they excavated everything else underneath and dug out. So we're fortunate we have a tremendous roof in the Top Pot brand. And we've been working hard to excavate and dig out underneath and build back to have the infrastructure to grow. And we finally hit that tipping point where we're ready to do that.
Great. And that sounds like you are looking to raise funding soon.
Correct. So there's funding for close-in opportunities that we have still here in town. And then there's funding required to take our show on the road, which we're also ready to do.
And can you tell us anything about your revenues and profit?
So we're north of $20 million. We are profitable, and we'll talk about it. Some of the headwinds that we have locally here too have been a challenge, but we've turned the corner, and we are profitable and growing the top line at a pretty significant pace.
That's great. It is a challenging market. We'll dive into that in just a minute. But first, our next guest is Eric Hebel, who is CEO of Hebel & Company. Eric, you have a deep background as an entrepreneur. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but first, hopefully we can see this tape now and hear it. But some people in our audience may not know what halva is, so hopefully this will run. Let's take a look at some context first. All right, that is mouthwatering. And that chocolate, by the way, we'll talk about the premiumness of your product, but that chocolate does not look cheap. Welcome to the show, Eric. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, hi. I'm happy to be here. Thank you. My name is Eric Hebel. I'm the CEO of Hebel & Co. We are a Los Angeles-based food manufacturer specializing in an amazing confection called halva, which is made from sesame tahini. We make a premium organic version of it, and we're one of only 2 halva makers in the United States.
That's amazing. And where do you sell into?
Yeah, we primarily sell to grocery stores around the country. We're currently in about 1,200 stores and growing. That's the majority of our business, and a small portion of the business is selling direct to consumers online through our website and Amazon.
And do you sell just domestically, or do you sell worldwide?
Currently, we sell domestically, but the big news is we are expanding into Canada, hopefully starting this year.
Amazing.
So that's exciting.
You heard it here first. Tell us a little bit about your financing.
Sure. We've raised small amounts of money over the last couple of years. We did a small friends and family round last year, and now we're going out to do another round this year to support our growth. That factory you saw is our newer factory based in Long Beach. Prior to that, we were in a very small factory in North Hollywood that we just maxed out at. We couldn't move. We couldn't fit any more ingredients or people. So this new factory increases our capacity by tenfold. And along with that, we need some capital to support our growth.
So you too are looking for funding now.
Yes.
All right. Thanks so much, Eric. We will circle back with you later. But finally, our last guest is Alex Campbell. He is the founder and CEO of Savor We. Alex, you also brought some footage that gives us a snapshot of Savor We. Let's listen into that. All right. Well, Alex, tell us a little bit about yourself and Savor We.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate being on here today. My name's Alex Campbell. I'm the founder and CEO of Savor We are a Chicago-based company that curates exclusive food experiences. So think like the cooking class you just saw there, or dinners in off-limit locations throughout the city, or a Michelin-starred dinner paired with a blues musician, where each menu item that you're eating has a live song being played in real time.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to circle back to Shane, and we have some heavy-hitting topics, but first we want to get into a little bit more of your backgrounds. So Shane, you have wide-ranging experience in hospitality with a really impressive track record, from helping open the Cosmopolitan Hotel in 2010. You helped transform the Monte Carlo into the Park MGM. You helped open the Fontainebleau in Las Vegas. The list just goes on and on. You just took over the reins at the Foley Group 5 months ago, and now you're overseeing really this empire that includes sports, wine, and not just in Vegas. Has there been a learning curve in approaching some of those new verticals and markets? And how do you approach the learning curve?
Yeah, I think there's a learning curve both ways. So the reason that I was brought in is because of the hospitality and experience background. And I think it's an indication or a recognition of where our consumers and our customers are kind of thinking. It used to be in the past, you could just market and give all your things out and people would, clamor for them if they were any good. The reality is younger generations really don't care too much about our things. So whether it's we're selling beds, selling meals, selling tickets, we've got to be careful that it's not the things that they're interested in, it's the experience that they've built around us. So we've got like the Vegas Golden Knights creating what I would hands down say is one of the best experiences in all of sports. And just to give you an indicator of that level is we recently did some focus groups and we were rated higher than all other entertainment experiences in this town. And so at the end of the day, I think bringing that experience view has been important. And then for myself, obviously coming into sports, coming into the wines, while I've touched, dabbled, and have an incredible passion, the reality is we've been able to lean into our experts. And so if I look at the collaboration going right now, is that we've got the experts and things. I hope I bring some expertise from the hospitality experience side, and we're having a lot of fun blending the two to make sure we're set up for success in the future.
That's great. Thanks so much, Shane. And moving on to Jim, you have a deep background in food and beverage. You've worked at Starbucks APAC. You ran Restaurants Unlimited, which operates dozens of restaurants throughout the country. But you also worked at Aritzia, a clothing retailer. How did that figure into your career? And what are some lasting lessons that you took away from that job?
So there's two things. One is from the Starbucks days, if you missed on an LTO, it was okay. I'm still getting my Americano. You're still getting your latte. The base business is okay. I go to fashion. When you miss in fashion, there's no traffic. So you're not selling T-shirts. You're not selling your bread and butter items. So for me, that was a first. We had a miss one season, and we went from, what are we going to do with all this money to the doomsday scenario is now the forecast, and we have to figure this out. So it's just a great lesson, and which is a retail lesson anyway. You don't take anything for granted. You have to earn it every day. But that for me was just a real awakening in how fast things can change when you have a miss in the business and how fast you have to react. And the second lesson from Aritzia was how disciplined they were behind the scenes. So the operating principles were really tight, and there's elements of that I've taken forward today in just terms of structure and how we work and how we build culture around our activities.
And I know that your expertise is in turnarounds. Did that experience help you develop that expertise? And do you bring some of that to Top Pot today?
It did. And I think it started, I was a CPA, I was in public accounting. So I had exposure to a lot of different business models. Starbucks was so fantastic at being a planning company. We were starting 5 years out and working back to today. So those disciplines of never losing sight of where you're trying to go, matched with what do we do today to take a step in that direction was a great combination. And so when you focus on here's the vision, here's what we're trying to do, it's easy to break it down to step by step. How do we turn this thing around literally one day at a time?
All right. Eric, you have such an interesting background as an entrepreneur. Looking at your resume, it seemed like you were on track to becoming a media mogul, having launched a series of media companies starting from when you were in college. What prompted you to switch to a specialty food company? I would imagine, my guess would be that your last name has something to do with it, but you tell me.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, a lot of my businesses have been focused on selling media and marketing services to retailers, believe it or not, starting from my first business in college. and I did that for about 20 years in different businesses. How I end up in food is a completely unrelated subject. So this isn't a long-standing family business. After my last company, my brother, actually, we grew up eating halva as kids. We loved it. And my brother just had this epiphanies, which is, why is there no good halva made in the United States? And that was the beginning of this company, Hebel & Co. So we are family owned. It's myself, my brother, and my sister-in-law. And so that's where the name comes from. But so, if you look at my background, selling to retailers, I feel very comfortable doing that. Talking to retailers, I still go and visit stores just like I was doing 30 years ago. So different product, but similar type of environment. And this is definitely my favorite business that I've had in all the years. And what I love about it is this just, you see people trying the product, they love it, they buy it again, they tell you how much they love it, which is definitely very different than when you're selling media or marketing services. So it's just a really good feeling to bring the halva love to the world.
That's amazing. Are you deeply involved with the marketing and communications given your background?
Yes. I mean, we're a small company, so I'm deeply involved in many facets of the company, but certainly the marketing as well.
Awesome. Alex, you studied finance in college and then worked at a couple of startups before you joined Accenture, and then you founded Savor We. What prompted you to launch your business?
Yeah. The journey at Accenture was amazing. I loved every part of it. It was a grind in all aspects of the word. But food's always been a passion of mine. I grew up cooking. My mom taught me how to cook, and I'm always around having people over, entertaining, and realize like food is the true connector. No matter what race you are, where you come from, you can get to know someone through food. So decided that at 26, I was going to quit my job and try and start something. Didn't know it was going to be food related. Ultimately read about a guy doing these dinner parties in New York City. That got me thinking it would be interesting to do in-home cooking classes in a more intimate setting, which then led me to teach these classes out of my apartment with my two other buddies in Streeterville, Chicago. And then really had that epiphany, like, you know what, there's a lot of good chefs around the city. They probably want to make more than what they're making in the restaurant world. How can we turn this into more of a marketplace? And that's where we got started on building out the app, and then launched it in the best time to launch anything, COVID, right?
I was just going to ask, because I saw that you guys launched around in 2021, but you must have sought funding before that in the thick of the pandemic. So how do you convince investors to invest in something that is in person?
Yeah, you got to be a little bit dumb and hungry, right? So I think it was just the grind. Being able to kind of prove, I think we were going out to talk to chefs pre-COVID. A lot of chefs were like, no, I love where I'm at. I love my job. Yeah. And then COVID hit and people were getting furloughed. Restaurants were shutting down and they needed to figure out a way to make income. And on top of that, we figured out a way how to get them paid even more. Like a chef last week pulled in $5,000, which is amazing, relatively speaking to different restaurant industries. So kind of just stuck with it, and COVID proved to be a good tailwind for us into our investment conversations and whatnot.
That's great. And so you found that there was an appetite, so to speak, for in-person experiences, even in the thick of 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, I think you saw probably the biggest dynamic human shift in history that we will ever see. People were used to being able to go to their favorite restaurants whenever they want, and then that was all taken away. But as humans, we need connection. Mm-hmm. And again, one of the biggest pieces of connection is through food. So we actually started seeing a lot of people within their COVID bubbles wanting more of that 1950s dinner party. So we saw a big resurgence of that. We're able to get these chefs in, and obviously took all the precautions necessary at the time. But it really allowed us to find our footing kind of in that D2C direct-to-consumer space.
And to what extent, I would imagine that developing the relationships with chefs, sourcing those relationships and then cultivating those is a huge part of your business.
Yes. I like to pride myself as a people person, but ultimately at the end of the day, when you treat someone not as a commodity, but as a true asset, I think ultimately you're able to build a deeper relationship with the chefs, and giving them kind of that free ability to create the chef table where they're the center of it, no matter what it is, from corporate to a private gathering in the home, becomes a pretty easy selling point.
All right. Thank you so much, Alex. And we're going to take a break, but after we come back, we're going to dive into some of those tough topics and all the challenges you guys are dealing with. And there are a lot of them right now. We'll be right back.
There are those who think that things should be done a certain way, who never stop to ask, is there a better way? Now the era of "it's always been this way" is over. So let's shine a new light on how we work and live. And ask, what way is a better way? At JLL, we have the will to find new ways, illuminating a new path on the way to cleaner, smarter, more human. A way that's, well, brighter.
There are over 4,000 students at California Lutheran University.
Each with our own unique backgrounds, upbringings, and beliefs.
We don't look the same,
or think the same,
but we do share one thing in common. We're open to learning about the world.
Open to exploring new ideas.
And open to discovering our purpose.
Because when you're open,
the world is open to you.
Welcome back to the program. Now, we spoke about some of the headwinds confronting the industry. Shane, let's start with you. In Q1 of this year, Vegas tourism was down 7%, mostly driven by a drop in international tourism to the U.S. What are you seeing on the ground? How did those numbers impact your business?
Well, listen, obviously it's not just about Las Vegas. Obviously with the Vegas Golden Knights, it was very interesting because, again, one of the things you would assume is there's a drop in our attendance to sports games. In fact, we sold out pretty much every game. The reason is we're very locally focused. And I think that's something that a lot of the people here probably have in common, is that you have to be great locally first before you start to kind of get this idea that you can take on the world. So by having a very locals focused, and again, in sports, but even with our hotels, at our wineries, it's an incredible investment in the neighborhood and community that I think props you up. And again, probably the lessons out of COVID is that it was really tough unless you had that local support. And I think the incredible outpouring of doing things smaller in the community, connecting with those closest to you were important. So yes, there's a lot of changes and impact from tourism, which we're seeing across our businesses. But we're also seeing the upside that right now at our hotels, we're seeing drive markets really filling up those hotel rooms because people still want to get away. They still want great experiences. So I think it's about, just reminding ourselves success starts at home first.
So you mentioned, the locals are staying and they're staying at the hotels. But Americans are planning to spend less on food and travel as they brace for tariffs and softening of the U.S. economy, according to a recent bank rate study. So if that softening does happen as planned and people really start cutting back, and maybe you might see that in the locals, your portfolio includes high-end properties like Farmhouse Inn in Sonoma, Hotel California in Santa Barbara, Whitefish Mountain Resort, even locally in Vegas at the hotels and also the nights. Do you think people are still going to be willing to pay for those luxury experiences? And how are you baking those factors into your financial planning?
I think you start to go back to the definition of what is luxury today. Luxury isn't what it used to be, which is highly priced and highly exclusive. Luxury comes down to what do you want the luxury to be? What value do you put on something? So the answer to is like all of our businesses, as long as they provide value, have meaning, and I think quality. I think the Bain value pyramid was, a few years ago, really highlighted across all industries, across all businesses. The one thing a company cannot sacrifice is quality. So as long as you're still delivering quality, I think we find that people will still spend money. But there's just so much competition. And unfortunately, when there is that competition, someone usually has to come second, third, or fourth. So right now, it goes back to my beginning. It's less about our things, more about our experiences and making sure there's incredible quality in those experiences. And one of those places, that I think stands out is food, which is why we're here today. Alex put it perfectly. Food just brings people together. It's a great connector. And I think as long as you're pairing food and beverage with everything that you do, you're in good space.
You mentioned food. Restaurant costs are significantly higher in recent years, according to restaurant industry trade press. How are you coping at the restaurants? You mentioned, obviously you don't want to compromise on quality at all, but do you have to cut costs, remove menu items, squeeze margins, charge more?
I think you've got to be very careful getting away from your brand. The first thing you do is, we have to cut something. And what that tends to do is it starts to sacrifice the quality and it starts to sacrifice the brand. So I think we've been very intentional that when it comes to the food, that we are absolutely committed to delivering the experience, the brand, the quality. I think the one area which is the biggest challenge, and I'll talk about hospitality in general, is that hospitality, the labor pool is our biggest challenge that's out there. And I will say you can have the greatest food in the world, but if it's delivered poorly, you lost the experience. And I think that's probably one of our biggest challenges. I think the reality is coming out of COVID, we are still recovering. If U.S. consumer, the consumer index is correct, hospitality and leisure has the largest turnover rate and the largest unemployment rate, which means people are leaving our industry and they're not coming back into it. We've also got younger people are not interested in hospitality. They're making too much money online in the digital space. Older retirees out of COVID, 55 plus, decided to retire. We rely them in hospitality. And then the lack of, I think, childcare has probably had an input where we're seeing a lower input of females coming back in our industry. Add that to higher wages that are out there. The fact that younger people these days have a very limited tolerance for, I won't say exactly pain, but again, going through that learning cycle. I think that's our challenge. And so we, as all people in hospitality in the food business, while our food, I think we have to keep integrity on, I think that focus on culture, which we've mentioned, is just absolutely critical for our success.
Yeah, and it sounds like, the labor thing, I'm glad you brought that up because we're going to dive into that. It has been an issue since COVID and for some even before then, for various reasons. But really, and these days, between immigration raids and immigration policies and things, it's really constricted. It is a challenge. How are you meeting that challenge? How do you, especially in a market as saturated as Las Vegas, but also even Napa and some of these tourism markets where you have a lot of competitors, how do you attract talent? Because that is so key to that customer experience.
Yeah, so it comes back to culture and it comes back to what is the experience you offer. In a past life, I spent a lot of time and sort of wrote the book on culture. And the one thing that I can tell that all hospitality businesses, in fact, any business, culture is about the managers in charge. Your direct manager, Gallup just came out every year. It does an incredible study, the state of the workplace. It's very clear, when you've got disengaged team members, then your business, your product can be in real trouble. And the number one thing that drives that engagement, it's not foosball tables, it's not all the cool things you do, it's not even rate of pay, it's their direct manager. And so one of the things that we've been really focused on in a short amount of time that I've been here is actually we've put in new leadership expectations to get developing some training. I think it's critical that you are able to build your own. And I'm going to say I am very fortunate in the role of being able to say I'm a hospitality company that plays in sports, wines, hotels, and all of that. So we have a really interesting way to say, hey, your hospitality career doesn't have to be just about making beds or serving food. And so we're leaning into that. But a development in leadership, as small business owners, the panel will agree, the wrong hire at that manager level is really disastrous for that culture and can really set you back. So that getting the right people, particularly managers, is probably where I'm focused more than anything. I had two mandates when I walked in 5 months ago. Have we got the right leaders in place and have we got the right technology to secure our future?
Thank you so much. And we are going to get to technology and AI and all that. But first, let's move over to Jim. Jim, for those of people who did not see that beautiful video at the very beginning, we are going to run that video showing us some of your delicious donuts.
sun is breaking through. I grab my cup and think of you. The coffee's hot.
That is mouth-watering. Makes me very hungry. I should have had lunch. But we heard these are called hand-forged donuts. It's a great marketing term, but that sounds very cost-heavy. Each one is hand-rolled. Your chefs flip them over in the pan using a wooden instrument. And according to the restaurant industry trade press, we talked about this, costs are significantly higher in recent years. So how are you coping? Are you squeezing margins, removing menu items? Are you changing your processes at all? Or are you, to Shane's point, you can't really compromise on those things, so you just have to kind of absorb it for a while?
Yeah, it's a lot what Shane said. So I was watching Eric earlier when they were showing the video of his facility and watching him smile, and I'm doing the same thing, watching our stuff, going, let's go make some people happy. So similar to what Shane was saying, I say there's three things. When people hear Top Hot Donuts and Coffee, I want them to think people, quality, consistency. Hospitality is people. You will go as far as your people can take you. And quality, everything we do, it has to be. And then the consistency, because you got to deliver every single day, day in, day out. With respect to quality, you cannot compromise. Just as Shane said, we're an environment where we have to take pricing. You can never cut your way to prosperity. Mm-hmm. What we're facing now, you can't cut your way to survival. And the worst thing you can do when you know you have to take pricing, cut quality, reduce portions, and have the guests feel like, oh, they've dumbed it down, and then they get a higher bill than they did before too. Yeah. So you have to. Quality is an investment, and investment is very different from expense. So you can be ruthless on expenses and what's discretionary, what you need to do, but anything that's about your guests, about your product, about your people, that's an investment, and you have to stay with it. So in terms of what we do, the twists are all hand rolled, the Pershings, the cinnamon, and rolled out and cut, and it is fun to watch. It is fun to see. It is fun to eat. We can't mess with that because it would really change who we are. So if there's ways to be more efficient, we're all over it. We're going to do it. But that core essence of who we are and what the product is, we don't touch. Yeah. And so the other side of the equation then is you have to build sales. You have to build top line to do it. You can take pricing so far, and then you start to have attrition. And so it's about transactions. And a lot of that then comes down to, as Shane was saying, that the people and the culture. And that's the one thing I would add to that is that element of along the lines of, okay, who you're working for matters a lot. It's that people want to feel they're part of something, that what they're doing matters, that what they're doing is valued. They know why they're doing what they do. And I was watching the Stanley Cup final Monday night. Florida wins their second in a row. For those who don't know, that the Stanley Cup is literally a 35-pound trophy, and the first thing these teams do when they win it, everybody gets a turn to skate a lap holding this coveted trophy. And what Florida did was the rookie skated first. The people who weren't on the team before that didn't have Stanley Cup experience or winning skated second. And it wasn't until all of them had skated that the stars took their victory lap with the cup. And I thought, I'm watching that, getting goosebumps, going, what they did for Tone at the Top, what those leaders did on that team to create an environment where everybody felt valued was probably more critical than what they ever did on the ice.
And bringing it back to donuts, there are a lot of donut shops in Seattle. I saw just this article on these, and there was a long list of them. So when people walk into your shop, how is that experience going to be viscerally different than any other experience at other donut shops, whether it be a Dunkin' Donuts or a really fancy place?
Yeah. So one is we haven't messed with quality. Everything is fresh. It's from our bakery on our trucks to our cafes. There's no day olds. Nothing's been frozen and slacked. So it is fresh. It's high quality. But I think we're fortunate in this space. Donuts are a nostalgic product. I walk around. What's your donut story? What's your donut story? Everybody has one. Usually that takes them back to when they were kids. And so we have a product that has that opportunity to have a visceral attachment. And then specifically what we do, it's the approachable. It's the ones you had at grandma's house. It's the one you got after you finished your paper route on Sunday morning, the old fashions, the bars, the fritters. And so we have that chance to really attach and do more than just, hey, I'm having a sweet treat. It's a chance to take you back to some other time, some other place.
At the same time, Shane mentioned the labor shortage and the challenges there. Seattle has some of the highest wages and toughest scheduling laws in the country. From your time at Top Pot and Starbucks, how do these policies affect financial planning and on-the-ground operations in what you do? And how are you coping with it? How do you attract talent?
Yeah, it's critical. And I think, as Shane mentioned, when the gig economy was, it was tough to find people, because if I can go drive a car and make this and pick my own hours, why would I want to slave over, a flat top and be melting? So that was difficult. That's come around a little bit. The hardest thing, I think, for me is having the higher minimums commoditizes the jobs.
Yeah.
So we used to be able to compete on, we'll pay a little more. We want the best people, and it is so worth it to pay for talent and pay for people who want to be part of something. When the floor is up 75% over 5 years, as it is here in Seattle, jobs become more commoditized. It makes it harder to differentiate yourself as, hey, we care about our people. This matters. You matter to us. And you can't just do that through money. So all those elements of you're part of something bigger, you have the opportunity to put a smile on somebody's face every morning. That's what we have to appeal to be more competitive. And from a planning standpoint, it's just understanding it's real. There's no hope is not a strategy, and there's no, hoping this is all going to reset to where it was before. We're for all commodities and everything else, we're just at a new cost basis than we were 5 years ago. That's not changing. And waiting for, hoping it will is not getting you anywhere. So this is reality. We'll take it head on and we'll grind every day to succeed.
And with the labor, you mentioned, the floor is higher. So now everyone's paying. Seattle has one of the highest minimum wages in the country, if not the one. So in terms of getting employees to have a smile on their face, are you giving more on sort of like hours, or, where are you giving to where it becomes a better place to work, an enticing place to work?
Sure. We absolutely try to accommodate schedules, and because a lot of people are part-time and if you're in school or other things, so to make the hours work for what the team wants and needs. And then a lot just goes back to communication, that element of, hey, you know why you're here, you're part of something, clearly defined expectations. This is what it's about. And I think that gives a sense of value to the role as well, and just makes people want to stay because they feel a little more special than the place across the street where they could get the same amount of money.
Great. Eric, let's move over to you. Your company is known for being a premium manufacturer of halwa. I remember from covering ag for CNBC that tariffs impacted staple ingredients and premium or organic ingredients differently. How have they impacted you, and how do you financially plan for that?
That's a great question. And, I'm eager to hear what the other people on this panel think, because I don't think anybody knows yet. That's like what I keep hearing. Every time I ask my suppliers what's going on, they're like, we don't know. Prices have not increased as far as we know yet. And so, we're sticking with our current price. If prices do increase, we'll probably absorb the cost. As long as we're able to, we have good margins built in. So, but it's a strange time. Like, I wish that we had some answers.
And how do you bake that into the financial forecast, though? I mean, when you're looking, because there is so much uncertainty, and I've heard from a lot of CFO, that is the most challenging thing, is every day it's changing in terms of the ingredients.
Yeah. I mean, it's really wait and see. I mean, that's it. We have our core suppliers, and for us, like everybody else on this, quality is everything. I can say with confidence that we make the best tasting, highest quality halva in the world, without a doubt. That's our mission. People who have tried our halva, they tell us they agree with that statement. And so for us, we can never compromise on quality, right? And everything that goes into that is really the ingredients that we use. Everything is certified organic. And so that even makes it more challenging sometimes, because there's less suppliers for the high quality certified organic ingredients we use. But so far, we've been able to figure it out, work with our suppliers. A lot of our suppliers are also small companies, and we try to buy locally when we can as well. And everybody's just going through the same thing, trying to figure it out. But, for us,
certainty of misery is preferable to the misery of uncertainty. That we're all living through.
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry. So I think the biggest challenge that we see in the industry from an uncertainty standpoint is launching into new retailers. And we saw this during the pandemic too, where everybody's like, we have no idea what's going on. We're just going to hunker down, not do anything new and exciting, just stick to the core business and wait till we get through this. And so I think for us, it's all about that growth, getting into new doors, which we'll see what happens.
We have another commercial break coming up right now. But before that, I want to squeeze in Alex to talk about some of these challenges. Let's talk about Savor We. You're not just selling food, you're selling intimate, curated experiences. What's been the biggest challenging in turning a high-touch, bespoke service into a scalable model?
Yeah,
especially with consumer discretionary spending. Like, has that degraded at all? Are people still willing to pay these prices for these experiences?
Yeah, so budgets obviously have gotten tighter, but I think people are still spending on strategic experiences, right? And for us, an example, we just had a company come to us and they're like, hey, we're trying to figure out a new way to do some business development. Can you curate these high touch point dinners for a specific type of group in the industry we're trying to go into? So now you're taking them out of, like, I love restaurants, I love going out to eat. But when you kind of had the same repetitive dinner and you go to the same place over and over, people kind of get tired of spending that. So they want something more exclusive, more curated specifically towards them. So like we're working on a dinner at Tribune Tower, right? Where like no one can go into that building, but we have access to it because then now these consumers can use that, or clients can use it as like a really good BD opportunity for them.
Great. We're going to head over to a commercial break. When we come back, we have an audience question for you, Alex. So we'll pick it up then.
Cool.
We'll be right back.
I looked around at my other colleagues and I realized everybody had an MBA. And that's when I knew if I wanted to go any further in this company, I needed to further my education.
The executive MBA at Cal Lutheran is really a chance to further your education, but in an atmosphere that's conducive to your worlds.
PR, marketing, statistics, metrics, analytics, all those things that I learned in the program, I'm able to apply.
It was just great to have faculty who have the real world experience, but also understand how to impart that knowledge to folks in a classroom. It's an accomplishment that you can share with your existing network to help you kind of advance to the next level.
It actually got me into an interview for a different position.
I got promoted to the director of programming and operations for the whole music department.
You're going to walk back into your job or into a new job and really kind of have a wider view of what the possibilities are. To me, that's the number one thing.
All right, welcome back. And Alex, a question from Eric Hessler. How is inflation in wholesale food and overall labor making you rethink your 2026 growth plans?
That's a good question. So I think ultimately it comes down to what everyone's kind of spoke is we're not going to give up on quality. We have also built in really, really good margins. I mean, we're doing 45% margins, which is pretty good for a food business. So if there's ways where we'll be able to kind of absorb those, we will. But we also have good relationships with our suppliers right now. In terms of labor costs, the chefs that we have on are making significantly a lot more than what they would be in a restaurant. So we don't actually see any issues attracting talent. A lot of them are working at, Michelin starred restaurants or super high-end restaurants. And they'll do some of these gigs in their part-time where they'll be making extra cash. So that's really not an issue for us as we go into our growth plans there.
All right. Shane, you talked a little bit about technology, automation, AI, they're just a couple of levers. A lot of leaders have to make things a little bit more efficient. But to what extent can you use these tools when you're trying to optimize for customer experience? I mean, you're building high-touch customer experiences. Is that directly at odds with efficiency?
Well, I think that's where you split back of house, front of house. On the back of house, I mean, AI technology's got, I think, some incredible opportunities that I don't even think we understand yet, that we can take advantage of. The level of creativity and some of the elements, I think, is still to be discovered. I think the interesting part is on the front side. If you're in the experience and hospitality business like everybody here, I think it's actually one of the most important businesses moving forward. Why? Because as we become more tech-centric and AI reliant, guess what? We want to connect more with real human beings. And so and again, I think Alex might have put it earlier, it's like, how do you better connect than with food? And so whether it's over dinners and everything that we do, we pair with food and beverage. And it's been something that we've sort of mandated in all of our properties that we look at. I remember years ago, I was fortunate, I was sitting talking to Andre Balazs about his philosophy in the standard hotels. And he says, 50% of all our revenues need to come from food and beverage. That's unheard of in hotel space. It's like, it's always room centric. But when you start applying that and you start to realize that if you give people food and beverage when they want, wherever they want, and what they want, which means really having a very hospitality driven approach, food and beverage just goes better with everything. When I was in charge of Hayman Island on the Great Barrier Reef, I think my greatest experience was having a picnic in the middle of the Great Barrier Reef on a helicopter platform. Now, helicopter platform and the scene was pretty damn cool, but having a picnic with your favorite bottle of wine just put it right over the top. So I think AI, I think technology, absolutely, there's opportunities, but the real part of why hospitality is so cool, I think just for our mental health, food, hospitality, I think it's not going away. I think it's only becoming more and more important.
How is, though, you're talking about the creative potential, and you're right, like we're just at the tip of the iceberg with that. We don't really know even the potential, but can you describe some specific and concrete ways that AI is really helping to transform your business?
I think it's starting, one of the areas that I'm really interested in right now is marketing, because messaging, copying, there's so much that goes on. What we're seeing right now, and again, I did an exercise for one of our hotels where I spent less than an hour. We'd just done a branding exercise, and I'll caveat this by saying with AI, you have to educate AI. If you're just gonna let it do whatever it wants, you're in trouble. So you educate it. I actually spent time putting into AI information about our brand, the type of hotel that it's all about. And so I gave it some information, and then I started to ask it, I said, so give me a 2-sentence description of this restaurant or our coffee shop and all that. And I got to say, what they came back with was very impressive. And what was more important, it was so concise and on point. So that's an example of how we started to play around with it, that I think not just from the copy, but from video. I saw an AI demonstration the other day where we fed it some images and it all of a sudden became a video. And so it starts to open up the opportunities, I think, at quite an efficient rate. Moving forward, we're also using some AI video production to actually help us with training on the inside. We've found it very economical that, again, we give it a script, we give it some images, and all of a sudden we have this incredible 2.5-minute education video. So that's some of the opportunities, some of the things that we're doing.
Another question, thank you, Shane. Another question we're getting from the audience is, hope is not a strategy, as Jim says. How far out do you plan or strategize? A week, a quarter, a year, or 5 years? Eric, let me start with you there.
Yeah, so it depends on, what kind of planning. When it comes to, new flavors, let's say we're planning generally within a 12-month period. When it comes to new products, we might be thinking about next year. From a financial planning standpoint, we're generally looking 3 years out, because those are the kind of things that we can actually control and predict, right? Anything beyond that, when an early stage company, we can do it, but it's often just a lot of nonsense, right? So, as you're for a bigger company, certainly you can plan longer out, but we're in high growth mode. So it's really looking at the next 3 years, where we want to get to, what's realistic, and how we're going to get there.
All right. Alex, what about you? How far out do you plan to strategize?
Yeah, I think we kind of break it down. I have a 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, and then we go by kind of our years into quarters. But honestly, I'm always looking at our financials daily. So I know exactly what levers are going where. Ultimately, that's the greatest prediction to success, is if you're making money, then ultimately, if you're profitable, you kind of have a good thing going. But yeah, for us, we just kind of extend it out. I think 10's like the pipeline, let's sell this thing by then. But then 5 gets a little bit into more of the strategy of what products are we going to release? What experiences are we going to try to? New markets we're going to expand into after we, conquer Chicago.
All right. Jim, what about you? They quoted you in the question.
Yeah, wonderful. So it's for us, it's 3 years working back. And so that informs the investments you need to make in year one. So one example for us, we just launched our own loyalty app. We couldn't do that until we had a new POS system. So year one was last year, POS system, then we have the building blocks, then we can leverage off of that to get to an app. So when you're working back from 3 years out, it helps inform what you need to do now. The investments that are bigger than 1 year might dictate budget wise. So that really helps for perspective. And then managing the day-to-day, it's day-to-day. We have 13-week cash flow you have to manage it tight, but you got to work backwards from the future in terms of the bigger picture stuff, what you're planning to do.
And speaking of bigger picture, you guys are, you started with coffee in your story way back when, went
Correct.
into donuts, and now you're looking at going back into coffee. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Why and how are you doing it?
Sure. We've always roasted our own coffee, and in the last 2 years, we've made a big investment to up our game. And so it's been as simple as we need coffee that does the donuts justice. And I've eaten donuts my whole life. I've worked in coffee, especially coffee, for 20 plus
Starbucks,
years.
yeah.
Obviously, Starbucks, yes, it's obviously a natural pairing, but from an economic model, I want the frequency of coffee. Donut might be a treat. It's less frequent. Coffee's every day. Coffee's multiple times a day. And so to have people thinking of us as, oh, I want a beverage, there's a top pot I'm going, as opposed to, well, I'm in the store getting donuts, or I'm here with the kids and I'll get a coffee while I'm here. So that's a big deal for us to be seen and position ourselves as a coffee purveyor. And we have the same authenticity. We roast our own, and what we've done to upgrade our offerings, it's people that were working directly for Alfred Pete 30, 40 years ago that were working for Starbucks. And so it's real authenticity in upgrading it. And now we can pair it better. It's no different than wine. You don't want a white wine with a porterhouse. And so these hand forged donuts that are hearty and good, if the coffee isn't right, it's going to wash the coffee out. So we've done a lot.
But you want like a really premium coffee. It sounds like you're going for like a Blue Bottle or Stumptown type of tier versus a Dunkin' Donuts coffee, obviously. And that sounds expensive though, right? As far as like processes.
It is. And so we've had to invest in, it's great from a people standpoint. We have someone who is a barista who's now our coffee roaster, and she's been able to spend a couple years working with industry experts and learning the craft internally. We've invested in equipment to get the consistency of the product. There's a lot of science and a lot of art that goes into coffee. And so we've made those investments all the way back to origin countries where we source to get the quality right and be able to deliver it consistently, that we can then now leverage into something we're proud to talk about and share and get our guests to come and see. And then it's just like everything else on the labor. Coffee's at an all-time high. It went over $5 a pound recently, and it was almost a yawn because what isn't up 60% or 80% in our world? So it's sort of the same mechanics of quality costs what it costs. We're going to do it, and we're going to charge what we need to charge to deliver quality, and we're not going to apologize for that because this is what it takes to deliver. And so we look at it the same as everything else. You mentioned earlier you referred to this, that you might be looking to expand. How are you thinking about that? Are you looking at a franchise model? Where and how? I think closer in, it'll be company operated, because I think we need to prove that we can do it. And if you prove you can do it, then you'll have the franchisees you want coming to you, as opposed to, hey, please try us out. So out of the gate, I want that level of control so we can make sure people, quality, consistency are our standards, how we want to do it. And then it comes down to, we're looking at 5-7 different markets. Let's see what real estate looks like. Let's see what time to open looks like. Let's see what the market looks like for people, competition, everything else. And that way we don't have all our eggs in one basket. As we're doing all the prep work, we can say, all right, if it happens here first, let's go. If it happens in these two simultaneously, then let's go raise some more capital and do both at once. But really looking at it, what's the whole field? Great. We have a great question from the audience. It was a video question, so let's roll that question right now.
Hi, I'm Eric Eschweiler, a CFO from Chicago, and I'm looking for my next role. My question tonight is, how do you balance short-term cost pressures with the need to invest in longer-term brand equity and customer engagement, especially in a sector like food service, where the customers can be price sensitive, but relationships matter?
Shane, let's start with you on that question.
That's a great question. And I think we've all touched on it. It's about, you've got to have that 3-year plan. You're looking out to where you want to take your brand, and you have to be sort of committed to that. I think the short-term piece is what we're learning right now with this uncertainty that's going on right now. If you overreact and suddenly get this perspective that that's how it's always going to be, or that's what we need to do, I think you can seriously hurt your brand moving forward. So I think this resiliency, I think a word that gets thrown out a lot, but as probably all the CEOs recognize here, you can't have that knee-jerk reaction to everything you see on the news. I think you have to have a long-term approach and understand that there's a cost of doing business. And as long as you're willing to commit to that cost, which is market dictated, and you do it at the highest level, then I believe your short-term and long-term goals start to come together.
All right, thank you. Alex, to you now.
Yeah, I mean, I echo that. I think it's important to have kind of that 3-year plan. I'm a big believer of stay alive long enough to get lucky. Resilience makes it happen, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you don't want to sacrifice anything short-term on your brand, because it is really, really hard once that happens to basically have to repivot back into it. And now you're dumping even more money than you probably would have spent when you were cutting costs. So, to Shane's point, I think it's just really not reacting, proactive, not reactive.
And really quickly, we have about 5 minutes left, but I wanted to ask you, because you talked about expanding as well. You're right now in Chicago. Are you thinking about other markets? And
we're just focused on Chicago right now. There's a lot of money to be made here. And I think once we kind of have everything bolted down, then we can start looking in other markets.
Investment money. Yes. Yeah. All right. Eric, the audience question.
Yeah, I'm going to echo Shane and Alex. They both answered that perfectly. It's, for us, like them, we cannot compromise on our quality. That's everything. That's our brand. We're not trying to, sell our halva to everyone. It's for people who want the best halva, which also makes it a little bit more expensive. But as our costs go up, we're willing to absorb some of those costs. We have not raised our prices ever since we launched in 2017. So think about through all that inflation. And I really believe a lot of our suppliers have done the same on their end. So we've been able to keep our pricing pretty consistent. But it's all about just making sure we're selling to the right places where people are willing to pay a premium for our product. And again, just not compromising on quality.
Great, thanks. And Jim?
I think the only thing I would add is recognizing that the margin for error is lower than it used to be. So the consumer dollars are precious. You may not get the second chance that you used to if you make a mistake. And so when you make short-term decisions, if you disappoint a customer, they get a bad experience, you may not see them again. So really understanding that you got to bring it every day at a high level.
All right. Well, we have time for one quick last question. We have just 2 minutes left. Shane, tell us something that may surprise us about you.
Actually, I think you know this one, but if you Google hard enough, I was the travel channel TV host. I had my own reality show. There's nothing real in reality, people. So that's why I'll leave it at that. And by the way, all our strategy should be towards Chicago. Alex just told us there's a lot of money there. So thank you.
You're the founder of Founder House or something too, right?
Yeah,
so you're very heavily involved in the ecosystem there.
I am.
All right, Shane, travel host. So you're going to be stealing my job. That sounds fascinating. Jim, what would surprise people about you?
I'm playing competitive basketball at my advanced age. So
I love it.
Yeah, and it's team sport, and retail's a team sport. Everything we're doing here, team sport. So I love that component of it, and I also like the challenge because I'm not 6'5" and I'm not super gifted athletically. So there's that element of challenging yourself and doing whatever the team needs because I'm not the star. So it's a fun challenge and fun way to work off the donuts.
You have a favorite donut at Top Pot or anywhere else?
I do. So for me, this goes back to when I was a kid in Donut Story. So my grandma's house, there was a great bakery nearby, and I have just a vivid memory of being a kid, sleepover, all the cousins splayed out on the floor in sleeping bags, and I woke up, I heard the front door click, and I knew that was my grandpa leaving to go get donuts.
Great story. We have 1 minute left. So Alex, what would surprise people about you? What would surprise people?
I did a brief DJ stint during COVID. So I became a fake impromptu DJ and a artist. I still paint, but
what kind of music?
I was trying to do EDM.
Amazing. Eric, what would surprise people about you?
Well, one is that I am not a sweets person, if you can believe it.
You're savory. Oh my gosh.
But I do love halva, and so that is the one confection I do like. The one.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our guests for a fascinating discussion, and to John Lockhart with People Media and Jim Fusser putting this all together. We want to remind everyone, this show becomes a podcast tomorrow. You can listen in on Spotify, Apple, or your other favorite platforms. You can also access this show and podcast at www.cfofocus.org. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
Cheers, everyone.